Hi there everyone, welcome to Judas and Elite test Dark Souls 3 PvP mechanics. The title is quite self-explanatory, so in this video we are going to go through all the stuff that we have tested about Dark Souls 3 PvP. What works, what doesn't work, which techniques are back from the earlier games in the series, and what has been left behind. Since there is quite a bit of different stuff we will cover in this video, I have included shortcuts for different parts of this video in the video description, so you can find what you're looking for more easily. In Dark Souls 3, you can move into any direction while running when using lock-on. If you're walking when locked on to your opponent, you stay face to the opponent's direction. There are three major breakpoints for equip load that affect your rolling. Fast roll at under 30%, medium roll at under 70%, and heavy roll at over 70% of equip load. Even though your character looks slower when passing the point of medium and heavy roll equip loads, it does not affect your running or sprinting speed, only your rolls. Backsteps are more similar to Dark Souls instead of Dark Souls 2, meaning that you can no longer reliably iframe through hits with them. In Dark Souls 3, you can parry opponents' attacks with a shield or a weapon that has parry ability by pressing L2. Some shields have the ability to use weapon arts with L2, but these shields do not have the ability to parry. You can tell this by looking at the icon next to the shield. Parrying overall feels a lot more forgiving and quite a bit more powerful in Dark Souls 3 than before, and you can parry even some of the fastest weapons just by reaction. When you see your opponent's swing start, immediately hit L2. Against some slower attacks you need to wait a bit, but there doesn't seem to be any extra magic in there this time around. So, let's provide answers to some questions that have been popping up about parrying. Can you parry attacks from max range? This interests people because in Dark Souls it was more beneficial to parry as close to your opponent as possible, when in Dark Souls 2 it was optimal to parry your opponent's blade part of the weapon. Yes, you can parry attacks from both up close and from the maximum length of your opponent's weapon. Can you parry jumping attacks? No, but you can partially parry them, meaning that if you parry your opponent's jumping attack, he does not enter into repostable state, but you won't stagger from their hit either. Can you parry kicks? No, but you can partially parry kicks. You will take the stamina damage but do not get staggered. Special kick attacks like scimitar or rapier kicks can be parried, however. Can you parry whips? No, you still cannot parry whips. Can you parry two-handed great weapons? In Dark Souls 2 it was impossible to parry two-handed ultra greatsword swings. But in Dark Souls 3, yes, you can parry ultra greatsword swings even when those are two-handed. But interestingly enough, you cannot parry their two-handed R2 attacks. Can you parry weapon art attacks? Dark Souls 3 added weapon arts as part of your attack arsenal, which can be done by pressing L2. We did a lot of testing with different kind of weapon art attacks and whether or not those can be parried. And here are the weapon arts that cannot be parried. Straight sword weapon art stance R1. Curved sword weapon art attack. Curved greatsword weapon art attack. Great Hammer weapon art attack. Ultra Greatsword weapon art stance R2. Partisan weapon art attack. And of course Whip's weapon art is unparryable since all the Whip attacks are immune to parry. All the other weapon art attacks that we tested could be successfully parried. Note that we didn't have the chance to test every single weapon in the game, so there might be some surprising exceptions. We also noticed that spinning type and partisan style horizontal sweep weapon art animations tend to be universally unparryable. But there's some exceptions like Dancer Swords, which is slightly different. Can you set up parry? Setup parry is a parrying technique familiar from all the previous Souls games, where you block the first attack of your opponent and parry the second swing. We tested multiple different weapons and if you can parry their basic R1 spams by blocking the first hit and parrying after that. The results were for the most part same with all different shields, but there is some slight difference between small and medium parry shields when it comes to parry startup speed. You can parry just about any weapon on their second swing, but differences between small shields and medium shields start to kick in when parrying the very fastest weapons in the game. Small parry shields can parry the second hit even against the fastest weapons like Curved Sword R1 to R1. But there is a chance you might trade damage with your opponent. Medium shields cannot parry Curved Sword R1 to R1, but can land a parry to third hit in the combo. Those can still parry something as fast as Katana R1 to R1, but you might still trade with your opponent. Every third hit in the combo with any parryable weapon can be parried with either small parry shield or medium shield with a parry. Note, you can even get a parry in between of running attack to R1. Can you backstep parry? Backstep parry was a technique in Dark Souls 2 where you used backstep iframes to avoid the first swing of your opponent's attack and parry the second swing of the weapon. No. Dark Souls 3 does not have any noticeable iframes in backsteps, so this technique is rather useless now. Can you super parry? Parrying with big weapons was often called super parrying Dark Souls 2. No, you cannot parry while two-handing weapons anymore. Do you deal more damage when you riposte two-handed instead of one-handing your weapon? No. Both one-handed ripostes and two-handed ripostes deal exactly the same amount of damage. Backstabs used to be a very strong tool in the earlier games, but in Dark Souls 3 its usefulness in PvP has been greatly limited. You cannot anymore activate successful backstab by just getting behind your opponent. There's noticeable startup time you need to go through before successful backstab can be landed. If your opponent gets away during this startup time, your backstab animation comes out as a normal attack that can deal damage, but you're frozen in place for the duration of that animation. For now, it seems that backstab is used most consistently when you read that your opponent is going for a parry, and punish the parry attempt with a backstab, or when you successfully manage to sneak up on your opponent. Now, let's provide answers for a couple of things about backstabs. Can you still roll backstab? Roll backstab was a technique where you could roll through your opponent's attack, ending behind them, and punish them with a backstab. Roll backstab is not entirely impossible to pull off, but now you can only roll backstab some of the most slowest attacks with any consistency, and even then you need to be very early with your roll. Landing roll backstab against faster attacks is almost impossible to pull off before your opponent already gets time to get away. Can you kick the backstab? No, there is not enough time to catch your opponent before they already have time to roll or move away. Can you chain backstab? Chain backstabbing was a technique in Dark Souls that let you keep your opponents in backstab loop by getting the backstab again when they were getting up from the ground. No, chain backstabbing doesn't seem to be possible to perform reliably anymore.